The day my husband asked for a divorce, I found a positive pregnancy test in his car's glove compartment, not mine. As he nervously explained he was leaving me for his high school sweetheart, my phone vibrated with a bank alert. He'd just transferred $50,000 from our joint account. That's when I decided, instead of fighting this divorce, I'd orchestrate it in ways he'd never expect. Starting with the perfect wedding gift that would unravel everything they thought they knew. I've always prided myself on my impeccable timing. As an event planner for Manhattan's elite, timing is everything. But today the timing wasn't mine to control. My fingers paused over my laptop keyboard as Mark's footsteps approached my home office. I'd been putting the final touches on a presentation for a celebrity client. The kind that could transform my boutique planning agency into something extraordinary. "Sophie, do you have a minute?" Mark's voice had that careful quality I'd come to recognize over our 8 years of marriage. The voice that meant something was wrong. I saved my work and turned, forcing a smile. "Perfect timing. I'm just wrapping up." He didn't smile back. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe, unable to fully enter the room. That's when I knew. I don't know how to say this. He ran his hand through his dark hair, the nervous gesture I once found endearing. "Just say it, Mark." My voice remained remarkably steady, betraying none of the sudden hollowness expanding in my chest. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air between us. I should have been shocked, devastated, angry, any of the reactions he was clearly bracing for. But the truth? I'd suspected something was wrong for months. The late nights at the office. The sudden business trips. The way he angled his phone away when texting. "Is there someone else?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded, looking both relieved and surprised by my calm. "Her name is Olivia." "Olivia Reynolds?" The name slipped out before I could stop it. His high school girlfriend. The one whose breakup had left him shattered when we met in graduate school. We reconnected 6 months ago. It just happened. He had the decency to look ashamed. "I never meant to hurt you." "Of course not. They never do." "I see." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "I think I need some air." Mark stepped aside, confusion replacing guilt on his face. He'd expected tears, screaming, perhaps things thrown. My composure was throwing him off script. I grabbed my purse and car keys. "I'll be back later. We can talk more then." In the garage, I slid into the driver's seat of my car, but didn't start the engine. Instead, I opened his glove compartment looking for the registration documents. Mark and I shared this vehicle, though he used it more frequently. That's when I found it. A small plastic stick nestled among insurance papers and parking receipts. A pregnancy test. Positive. My hand trembled as I stared at the 2 pink lines. After years of Mark telling me, not yet, about starting a family, the irony wasn't lost on me. I placed it back exactly as I'd found it and started the car. As I backed out of our driveway, my phone vibrated with a notification. Alert. Transfer of $50,000 from joint account number 4729 to account number 8615. I pulled over, my hands now shaking in earnest. The account he'd transferred to wasn't one I recognized. In 8 years of marriage, I'd never seen that account number. Something cold and clear crystallized inside me. This wasn't just about Mark leaving me for an old flame. This was calculated. Planned. He was securing his future while dismantling mine. I dialed the number of my closest friend, who also happened to be one of New York's most ruthless divorce attorneys. "Nora? It's Sophie. I need your help." "What's wrong? You sound strange." "Mark asked for a divorce today. He's leaving me for his high school sweetheart." "That bastard." "I'll be right over." "No," I interrupted. "I don't want to fight this divorce. I want you to help me orchestrate it." "What do you mean?" I pulled back onto the road, a plan already forming. "Mark thinks he's written the end of our story. But he forgot who he married. I don't just plan events, Nora. I create experiences. Moments people never forget." "Sophie, what are you thinking?" I drove past our favorite restaurant where Mark had proposed 8 years ago. Past the park where we used to picnic on Sundays. Past the life I thought we were building together. "He's going to marry her," I said with unexpected clarity. "And I'm going to help them have the perfect wedding." "You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am. And I already know exactly what wedding gift I'll be giving them." As I drove, memories of our marriage flickered through my mind like an old film reel. The laughter, the dreams, the promises. All built on what now felt like shifting sand. But I wasn't going to crumble. Not this time. Sophie, whatever you're planning. Trust me, Nora. By the time I'm done, they'll wish I had just fought the divorce like a normal, bitter ex-wife. Meet me at my office in 30. And Sophie? Don't do anything I can't defend in court. I smiled for the first time since Mark had uttered those life-changing words. I wouldn't dream of it. I can't believe he's leaving you for Olivia Reynolds, Nora said, sliding a glass of red wine across her kitchen island to me. High school sweethearts reuniting. How terribly cliché. I took a sip, letting the warmth of the Cabernet wash through me. Apparently they're soul mates who were meant to find each other again. And you found this out how? Mark left his email open on our shared iPad. I shrugged. Not my finest moment, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. Nora's apartment overlooked Central Park, a perk of being one of Manhattan's most sought-after divorce attorneys. The city lights twinkled below us like stars, reminding me how small my problems were in the grand scheme of things. Strangely comforting. Tell me everything, Nora demanded, professional instincts kicking in. Start with how you two met. I closed my eyes, remembering. Graduate school. Columbia. Mark was in the MBA program. I was studying event management. We met at a campus mixer I'd organized. The memory was vivid. Mark standing alone by the drinks table, looking lost and slightly uncomfortable in a room full of networking students. I'd approached him, clipboard in hand, asking if he was enjoying himself. He was recovering from a breakup, I continued. With Olivia, actually. They dated all through high school and college, but broke up when she got a job opportunity in London. So you were the rebound that stuck, Nora observed. I prefer to think I was the woman who helped him discover what an adult relationship could be, I replied with more edge than intended. But yes, essentially. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram, sliding it across to Nora. That's her. Nora studied the profile of Olivia Reynolds, lifestyle influencer and self-proclaimed authenticity advocate, with nearly 1 million followers. Her feed was a carefully curated collection of sunrise yoga poses, meticulously arranged smoothie bowls, and inspirational quotes set against pastel backgrounds. Very aspirational, Nora commented dryly. She returned from London about a year ago. Started building her brand as a wellness influencer. I took another sip of wine. Mark always kept tabs on her social media. I never thought much of it. We all check up on exes occasionally, right? When did they reconnect? According to the emails, she reached out to him about 6 months ago, asking for marketing advice for her growing brand. I laughed humorlessly. How convenient. Nora scrolled deeper through Olivia's feed. She's been presenting herself as self-made. Look at these captions. Built this business with nothing but determination and faith. No handouts, just hard work. That's the thing, I said, pulling up my banking app. I've been going through our financials. Mark has transferred over $75,000 to various accounts in the past 5 months. Some to the account he moved money to yesterday, some directly to a business LC registered in Olivia's name. Nora's eyes widened. He's been funding her business? While she's been portraying herself as a self-made entrepreneur. I nodded. And that's not all. Based on the timestamps of their email exchanges, they've been seeing each other for at least 8 months. Not 6 like he claimed. He lied about when it started. And for how long it's been going on. I drained my glass. Here's where it gets interesting. 3 months ago, I noticed Mark started taking more business trips than usual. Weekend conferences, client meetings in other cities. Let me guess, Nora said. There were no conferences. Oh, there were conferences, I replied. But Mark wasn't attending them. He was meeting Olivia at hotels in those cities. I found the receipts, 2 room keys, couples massages. All while I was working weekends to land the Wellington account for my business. I'd built my event planning company from scratch, starting with small corporate functions and gradually working my way up to high-profile social events. The Wellington wedding, daughter of a tech billionaire marrying into political royalty, would put my company on the map nationally. Sophie, Nora placed her hand over mine. I know you're hurt, but you're handling this with remarkable composure. What choice do I have? Fall apart? That's exactly what he expects. My phone buzzed with a text message from Mark. Where are you? We need to talk about living arrangements. Speaking of expectations, I said, showing Nora the message. He's getting impatient. Good. Let him sweat. The doorbell rang, surprising us both. Nora checked her security camera feed. It's Mark's mother, she said, confusion evident in her voice. My heart dropped. Patricia? She's supposed to be in Florida. Should I send her away? I shook my head. No, let her up. She doesn't know about the divorce yet. Patricia had always treated me like the daughter she never had. The thought of breaking her heart with this news made my chest ache more than Mark's betrayal. When Patricia stepped into the apartment, her face brightened at the sight of me. Sophie, darling. I tried your house but no one was home. The doorman said you might be here. I stood to embrace her, inhaling her familiar scent of Chanel No. 5. Patricia, what a surprise. I thought you were in Sarasota until next month. I came back early. I have news. He pulled back, beaming. Mark's father and I are renewing our vows for our 40th anniversary, and I want you to plan it. Who better than my brilliant daughter-in-law? Nora choked slightly on her wine. I maintained my smile through sheer force of will. That's wonderful news, I managed. When are you thinking? December. Our actual anniversary date. He squeezed my hands. I know it's short notice for your busy schedule, but family comes first, right? Family. The word echoed hollowly within me. Of course, I said. We'll make it perfect. As Patricia chatted excitedly about her vision for the vow renewal, I caught Nora's eye. In that moment something shifted inside me. If Mark thought I would quietly disappear from his family's life, he was sorely mistaken. I wouldn't just survive this divorce. I would orchestrate every aspect of it, starting with how and when his family discovered the truth. The keys to my new apartment felt impossibly heavy in my hand. Standing in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, I should have felt something, grief, fear, perhaps a sense of loss. Instead, I felt oddly liberated. Well, what do you think? The real estate agent hovered nearby, clearly sensing a commission. It's rarely available, especially with this view. I'll take it, I said, surprising both of us with my decisiveness. 2 weeks had passed since Mark's confession. 2 weeks of careful negotiations, silent dinners, and sleeping in separate bedrooms. I'd moved methodically, consulting with Nora about every step, documenting every financial discrepancy. Mark had expected hysteria. What he got instead was calculated efficiency. I'll have the paperwork ready tomorrow, the agent said, barely containing her excitement. Congratulations on your new home. Home. The word felt foreign yet promising. A clean slate. 3 days later I stood in the same space, now transformed. A cream sectional sofa faced the windows, anchored by a hand-woven rug in shades of blue and gold. Bookshelves lined one wall, already filled with my collection of art books and novels. Fresh flowers brightened the kitchen counter. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Need to pick up more of my things. When will you be home? I corrected him. I'm at my apartment. The house is empty until 7. His response came quickly. Your apartment? When did this happen? I didn't answer. Instead, I hung the last of my clothes in the bedroom closet, smoothing the fabric of dresses Mark had always complimented. Strange how clothing could hold memories. A black silk dress from our anniversary dinner in Paris. A blue sundress from weekends in the Hamptons. I considered donating them, then decided against it. Those memories were still mine regardless of how our story was ending. At precisely 6:30 my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera, surprised to see Mark standing there, shifting his weight nervously from foot to foot. I opened the door. This is unexpected. He looked past me into the apartment, eyes widening slightly. You've been busy. Did you need something? He hesitated. Can I come in? I stepped aside, allowing him into the space that was entirely mine. Watching him take it in, noting the absence of our jointly purchased furniture, the art we'd collected together, I saw confusion register on his face. This wasn't the half-empty existence of a woman falling apart. It looks like you, he finally said. That was the idea. Sophie, He ran his hand through his hair. I'm confused. You're acting like this is all fine. What did you expect? That I'd beg you to stay? Slash your tires? Burn your clothes on the front lawn? No, but would it make you feel better if I did? I asked calmly. Would it ease your guilt if I fell apart? He had the grace to look ashamed. Of course not. Then why are you here, Mark? Your attorney has been stalling on the settlement terms. Olivia and we'd like to move forward. He cleared his throat. We're getting married. As soon as the divorce is finalized. The words should have been a knife to the heart. Instead, they confirmed what I already knew. Mark wasn't just leaving me, he was replacing me with a carefully crafted narrative. High school sweethearts reunited. A fresh start. No mention of the infidelity, the financial deception, the years we'd built together. Congratulations, I said, surprising us both with my sincerity. I hope you'll be very happy. His brow furrowed. You don't mean that. I do actually. I moved toward the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water. Would you like a drink? I have that scotch you like. No, Sophie, what's going on? Why aren't you fighting this? I thought of my mother, how bitter she'd become after my father left. How she'd spent years in a protracted divorce battle that drained her finances, her energy, her joy. How I'd promised myself I would never become that woman, hollow-eyed and fueled by resentment. I'm choosing a different path, I said simply. One that doesn't involve destroying myself to punish you. I don't understand. You don't have to. I sipped my water. Nora will contact your attorney tomorrow with my terms. They're reasonable, you'll see. Mark stared at me, clearly thrown off balance. This wasn't the script he'd been following in his head. Oh, and Mark? Your mother invited me to dinner on Saturday. The one you're bringing Olivia to. His face paled. My mother knows? Not yet. But she will. I set down my glass. Don't worry, I won't make a scene. That's not my style. You coming to dinner? With my family. And Olivia. I was invited. I shrugged. It would be rude to decline. The evening of the dinner arrived and I dressed with particular care. A burgundy dress that highlighted my figure without being obvious about it, hair styled in loose waves, makeup subtle but flawless. As I fastened a pair of diamond earrings, a gift from Patricia last Christmas, I studied my reflection. The woman looking back at me wasn't broken. She wasn't bitter. She was something altogether more dangerous, composed. Mark's parents' home in Greenwich hadn't changed since the first time he brought me there. The same warm lights glowed from windows framed by ivy. The same gravel driveway crunched beneath my heels as I approached the front door. Patricia opened it before I could knock, enveloping me in a hug that threatened to undo all my careful composure. Sophie, darling. I'm so glad you came. She pulled back, studying my face. You look beautiful as always. Thank you for inviting me. She lowered her voice. Mark brought someone. A friend, he says. I didn't know until they arrived. That's all right, I said, squeezing her hand. Let's have a lovely evening. As I stepped into the living room, all conversation stopped. Mark stood by the fireplace, Olivia at his side looking uncomfortable in a dress clearly chosen to impress his parents. His father Richard nodded at me from his armchair, surprise evident in his expression. And then I smiled, genuinely warmly, and the room collectively exhaled. Sorry I'm late, I said. Traffic on the Merritt was terrible. Sophie Montgomery? The receptionist at Wellington Media's headquarters looked up from her computer. Ms. Wellington is ready for you now. I smoothed my skirt and picked up my portfolio. This meeting could change everything, not just for my business but for the leverage I needed in my increasingly complicated divorce. Vivian Wellington, daughter of tech billionaire Robert Wellington and fiancée to Congressman Andrew Pierce, had been interviewing event planners for their wedding for months. Being on her shortlist was already a coup. Landing the contract would catapult my company into the uppermost echelon of New York event planning. Sophie. Vivian stood as I entered the conference room. Tall and effortlessly polished, she extended her hand. I've heard wonderful things about your work. Thank you for considering me, I replied, setting my portfolio on the glass table. I've put together some preliminary ideas based on what you've shared about your vision. For the next hour, I walked Vivian through concepts for her wedding. An autumn ceremony at her family's Hudson Valley estate, followed by a reception that would blend old-world elegance with modern sensibilities. I'd researched her family history, her fiancé's political aspirations, and the delicate balance required for an event that would be both personal and inevitably photographed for society pages. This is. Vivian flipped through the mock-ups. This is exactly what I've been trying to explain to other planners. How did you understand so perfectly? I smiled. My job isn't just to plan an event. It's to tell your story. By the time I left Wellington Tower, I had a verbal commitment and the promise of a contract by week's end. I stepped into the spring sunshine feeling lighter than I had in weeks, until my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Need to meet. Settlement issue. The usual place, 1 p.m.? Our usual place was a small cafe near our former home, where we'd spent countless Sunday mornings over coffee and the Times. The familiarity of it felt like a manipulation, but I agreed anyway. Mark was already seated when I arrived, 2 coffees on the table, mine prepared exactly as I liked it. Congratulations on the Wellington wedding, he said as I sat down. News travels fast. Thank you. I left the coffee untouched. What's the settlement issue? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I'd like to expedite things. Get the divorce finalized by next month if possible. Why the rush? The cooling off period requires. I'm aware of the legal requirements, he interrupted. But there are ways to accelerate the process if both parties agree. I studied him, noting the slight tension around his eyes. What's changed, Mark? He hesitated, then sighed. Olivia and I want to launch her beauty brand this summer. The investor presentation is next month, and it would be cleaner if our divorce was finalized. Cleaner, I repeated, finally reaching for the coffee. For the investors, you mean? For everyone. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm prepared to be generous with the settlement. The house, the Hamptons property, the investment portfolio, they're yours. I just need liquidity right now. The pieces clicked together. Mark needed cash for Olivia's business launch, cash that was currently tied up in our joint assets. Assets that would remain frozen until our divorce was settled. How much do you need? I asked directly. His eyes widened slightly at my forthrightness. $2 million. For the initial manufacturing run and marketing campaign. I nearly choked on my coffee. $2 million. For an untested beauty brand from an influencer with borrowed credibility. It's a solid business plan, he defended. We've done the market research. With the right backing, Olivia's line could rival Glossier in 18 months. And the investors? They're not providing the full capital. Mark's silence told me everything. There were no investors yet, just promises contingent on that first successful run. He and Olivia were betting everything on this launch. Let me be clear, I said, setting down my cup. You want me to agree to an expedited divorce so you can access our joint assets to fund your girlfriend's business venture? When you put it that way. How else should I put it? I kept my voice even, though anger flared hot beneath my ribs. Not just at the request, but at the assumption I would agree. That I was still the accommodating wife who would rearrange her life for his convenience. Mark leaned back, frustration evident in the set of his jaw. I thought you were being reasonable about all this. At the dinner with my parents, you seemed fine. I am being reasonable. But reasonable doesn't mean I'll disregard my interests to serve yours. The memory of our early years flashed through my mind. How I'd supported Mark through his MBA program, postponing my own career goals. How I'd helped him build connections through my event planning work, introducing him to investors who later backed his marketing firm. How I'd believed we were building something together, only to discover I was building a foundation for him to leave. I need time to consider this, I said finally. And I'll need to speak with Nora. Of course. He nodded, relief evident in his posture. He thought I was giving in. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The Wellington contract arrived ahead of schedule. I smiled to myself, a plan forming. One more thing, I said, standing to leave. If I agree to expedite the divorce, I'll need something in return. Name it. A condition in the settlement agreement that you'll honor all existing family commitments. I met his eyes steadily. Including your parents' vow renewal in December. Which I'll be planning. What? Why would you? Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt Mark staring after me, confusion radiating from him in waves. He didn't understand that I wasn't just negotiating a divorce settlement. I was orchestrating a much larger event, one where the final act would be worth waiting for. That evening, as I reviewed the Wellington contract, my doorbell rang. The security camera showed Olivia standing in the hallway, shifting nervously from foot to foot. I opened the door, genuine surprise overriding my usual composure. "Olivia. This is unexpected." "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, her voice carrying the slight lilt of practiced sweetness that had likely charmed millions of followers. "Mark doesn't know I'm here. Come in." I stepped aside, curiosity overriding caution. She entered, taking in my apartment with poorly disguised assessment. "It's lovely. Very, you. Thank you. Can I offer you something to drink? Water? Wine?" "Water is fine," she replied, perching on the edge of my sofa as if afraid to fully commit to sitting. I brought her a glass, then sat across from her, waiting. "I wanted to talk to you woman to woman," she began, voice earnest. "About Mark. About the situation." "I'm listening." "I never intended to come between a married couple," she said, eyes wide with practiced sincerity. "When Mark and I reconnected, it was just as old friends. But sometimes the heart wants what it wants." I managed not to roll my eyes at the cliché. "And your heart wants Mark." "We have history," she nodded. "A connection that never really died even when we were apart." "And now you're launching a beauty brand together," I observed. Something flickered across her face, surprise perhaps that I knew this detail. "Yes, well, that's part of why I'm here. Mark mentioned you're hesitating about the expedited divorce. I'm considering my options." "I understand," she said quickly. "But if you could find it in your heart to agree, it would mean so much to us. To our future." I studied her. The carefully applied makeup, the strategic bohemian chic outfit that likely cost more than most people's monthly rent, the practiced vulnerability in her expression. What struck me most was what she didn't know. About Mark's financial situation, about the debt he'd accumulated, about how precarious their fresh start actually was. "Can I ask you something, Olivia?" She nodded, relief evident in her shoulders. She thought she was getting through to me. "Does Mark ever mention how he'll pay off the Anderson loan?" The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, cream-colored and heavy, my name written in elegant calligraphy on the front. I knew what it was before I even opened it. "Mark Alexander Mitchell and Olivia Jane Reynolds request the honor of your presence at their wedding celebration. A date just 10 weeks away. A vineyard in the Hamptons." Ironically, one I'd introduced Mark to during a weekend getaway 3 years earlier. A handwritten note slipped in with the formal invitation. "Sophie, we hope you can join us. It would mean a lot. Mark and Olivia." I traced my finger over the embossed lettering, remembering conversations from early in our marriage. How Mark would describe our future children. A boy with my smile, a girl with his eyes. How we'd travel the world together once his business was established. How we'd grow old on a porch somewhere watching grandchildren play in a sunlit yard. Years of someday, and not yet for the family I'd dreamed of. Years I couldn't get back. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Montgomery? There's a Nora Patel here to see you. Send her up, please." Nora arrived moments later, brandishing a bottle of champagne. "I got the contract. Wellington signed with all your terms intact." Her celebration faltered when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" I handed her the invitation. "They invited you to their wedding?" Nora's voice rose in disbelief. "That's either incredibly cruel or surprisingly civil, and I can't decide which." "Mark thinks it proves they harbor no ill will," I said, moving to the kitchen for glasses. "That we're all mature adults moving forward with our lives." "And what do you think?" I popped the champagne, considering the question. "I think Mark wants to avoid looking like the villain. If his ex-wife attends his wedding, surely the divorce was amicable, right? No betrayal, no secret girlfriend, just two people who grew apart." "Are you going to go?" Nora asked, accepting a flute. "Of course." I clinked my glass against hers. "I wouldn't miss it." Nora nearly choked on her champagne. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious. In fact, I've already selected their gift." "Sophie." Nora set down her glass, concern evident in her expression. "Whatever you're planning is perfectly legal and surprisingly generous," I finished for her. "Trust me." The next morning, I arranged a meeting with the one person who could help execute my plan. Mark's father, Richard Mitchell. Richard had always intimidated me slightly. A self-made businessman with exacting standards and little patience for inefficiency. Unlike Patricia, who had welcomed me warmly from the beginning, Richard had taken years to accept me into the family fold. We met at his club, a wood-paneled sanctuary in Midtown where men like Richard had been making deals for generations. Sophie. He stood as I approached his table, pressing a brief kiss to my cheek. You look well. Thank you for meeting me, I said, taking the seat across from him. A waiter appeared immediately and Richard ordered for both of us. Scotch for him, sparkling water for me. Old habits. I assume this is about the divorce, he said once we were alone again. And the wedding invitation. You know about that? Patricia showed me. She's quite disturbed by the whole situation. He studied me with eyes remarkably similar to Mark's. As am I. That's partly why I wanted to meet, I said carefully. I'm concerned about how this is affecting Patricia. The vow renewal planning has become complicated. Richard's expression softened slightly. She's determined to go forward with it despite everything. Says 40 years of marriage deserves celebration, regardless of what our son is doing with his life. I agree. And I'll honor my commitment to plan it. He looked genuinely surprised. Even after the divorce? Family isn't just about legal documents, I said simply. Richard nodded slowly, a new respect evident in his gaze. What do you need from me, Sophie? Information, I replied. About Olivia Reynolds. His eyebrows rose. Mark's fiancée? Yes. I understand you've met her several times now. I'd like your impression. Richard took a thoughtful sip of his scotch. She's charming, certainly. Very attentive to Mark. Asks all the right questions about the family business, our connections. Too attentive? I prodded gently. He set down his glass, eyes narrowing. Are you suggesting she has ulterior motives? I'm collecting information, I corrected. Mark is investing significantly in her beauty brand. $2 million to be exact. The slight widening of Richard's eyes told me what I needed to know. Mark hadn't disclosed the full amount to his father. That's substantial, Richard said carefully. Especially given the current market. It's their entire liquid capital, I confirmed. Plus some they don't actually have yet. Which brings us to why you're really here, Richard concluded, ever the businessman. What is it you want, Sophie? I want to give them a wedding gift they'll never forget, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. And I need your help to do it. 2 hours and one more scotch later, Richard and I had reached an understanding. Not quite an alliance but something close to it. As we parted outside the club, he squeezed my hand with unexpected warmth. Patricia was right about you from the beginning, he said. You've always been too good for him. The following week I found myself face to face with Mark in our former home, now emptied of most furnishings as we prepared it for sale. You RSVP'd, yes, he said without preamble. To the wedding. I did. Why? I continued boxing books from the built-in shelves, not looking at him. You invited me. As a courtesy, he clarified. I didn't actually expect you to come. Then you shouldn't have invited me. I closed a box, labeling it with a marker. Besides, your mother will appreciate having someone familiar to sit with during the ceremony. Mark's expression darkened. My mother has declined the invitation. This was news. Patricia isn't coming to your wedding? She says she's ill. His tone made it clear he didn't believe the excuse. My father claims he can't miss an important board meeting that weekend. I see. I kept my face neutral, though satisfaction warmed my chest. The Mitchells had made their position clear. Sophie. Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice though we were alone in the house. What are you doing? Packing books, I replied, deliberately misunderstanding. You know what I mean. The wedding RSVP. The expedited divorce with those specific conditions. The sudden interest in my parents' vow renewal. His eyes searched mine. It doesn't add up. What would make more sense to you, Mark? If I fought the divorce? If I made scenes at family dinners? If I badmouthed you and Olivia to anyone who would listen? Yes, he admitted, frustration evident in his voice. At least that would be normal. I'm not interested in being normal, I said, closing another box with decisive movements. I'm interested in being happy. And surprisingly, accepting your choices and moving forward with dignity makes me happier than destroying myself to punish you. Mark stared at me, confusion mingling with something that looked almost like regret. I don't understand you anymore. You never really did, I said softly, the truth of it settling between us like dust. That's part of the problem. After he left, I sat alone in what had once been our living room, surrounded by boxes and emptiness. My phone buzzed with a notification. A message from Richard Mitchell containing exactly what I'd asked for. Documentation of every loan Mark had taken against his trust fund over the past decade. Loans that Olivia almost certainly knew nothing about. The perfect wedding gift was taking shape, piece by piece. Not revenge exactly. Something more elegant. Something worthy of the event planner who had built her reputation on creating unforgettable moments. I opened my laptop and began a new document. Wedding gift for Mark and Olivia. At the top I typed a single phrase. The truth beautifully packaged. The evening of Mark and Olivia's rehearsal dinner arrived with perfect early summer weather. Gentle breezes, golden sunset light, and the scent of lilacs heavy in the air. The vineyard's terrace had been transformed with strings of twinkling lights and arrangements of white peonies and greenery. I arrived 15 minutes after the scheduled start time, dressed in a pale blue silk dress that skimmed my curves without being obvious about it. As I approached the terrace, conversations hushed momentarily before resuming with forced casualness. The collective surprise at my appearance was palpable. Sophie. Patricia broke away from a small group, embracing me warmly. You came. I wouldn't miss it, I said, returning her hug. You look beautiful. She did, in a navy dress that complemented her silver hair. Patricia Mitchell looked every bit the elegant mother of the groom. But there was tension around her eyes, a tightness to her smile that spoke volumes. Come, she said, taking my arm. Richard will be so pleased to see you. As she guided me through the gathering, I caught glimpses of familiar faces. Mark's colleagues, mutual friends from our marriage, even a few of my own clients who looked distinctly uncomfortable at the sight of me. And then there was Olivia holding court near the center of the terrace, radiant in a white lace dress that carefully showcased what appeared to be a slightly rounded belly. My steps faltered momentarily. Patricia squeezed my arm. She's not, she whispered, correctly interpreting my reaction. It's padding. I overheard her asking her bridesmaid to adjust it earlier. The information landed like a stone in still water, ripples of implications spreading outward. A fake pregnancy, complete with strategic bump photos for her social media, no doubt. A narrative being carefully constructed. Does Mark know? I asked quietly. Patricia's silence was answer enough. We reached Richard, who greeted me with the same newfound warmth he'd shown since our meeting. Sophie, he said, kissing my cheek. Thank you for coming. Of course. I accepted the glass of champagne a server offered. How are you holding up? Richard's gaze drifted to where Mark stood with his groomsmen. Let's just say I'm glad you're here. It makes this whole affair slightly more bearable. The evening progressed with the usual rehearsal dinner formalities. Toasts from the best man and maid of honor, teary thanks from the bride-to-be, polite applause from guests who had largely divided into two camps. Team Mark and Olivia and Team Sophie. The latter group, I noticed with some surprise, was significantly larger. I had just returned from the restroom when Patricia appeared at my side, her expression uncharacteristically grim. I need to speak with you privately, she said, leading me away from the crowd toward a secluded corner of the vineyard's garden. Once we were alone, she turned to me, distress evident in every line of her face. Sophie, I don't know what to do. This wedding, it's all wrong. Mark isn't himself. He hasn't been since he left you. Patricia. No, please let me finish. I thought perhaps he was just going through something, a midlife crisis at 35. She shook her head. But then Richard showed me the financial documents. The loans. The money Mark has poured into this woman's business ventures. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, I said gently. It's not just the money, Patricia continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It's the lies. The pregnancy charade. The way she's isolated him from his friends, from us. He gripped my hands. Richard and I are not attending the wedding tomorrow. We simply can't bear to watch this. The revelation stunned me. Patricia, are you sure? Mark will never forgive. He'll forgive us eventually, she interrupted. but I'm not sure I could forgive myself for smiling through vows I know are built on deception. Before I could respond, a shadow fell across us. Mark stood there, his face flushed with either anger or too much champagne. "Mother," he said tightly. "The photographer wants family pictures." Patricia straightened her shoulders. "Of course." She squeezed my hand once more before following her son, leaving me alone in the garden twilight. I remained there for several minutes, processing this new development. Mark's parents skipping the wedding entirely changed the dynamics of my plan. Would it still work if they weren't present to witness it? Or would it actually make the impact stronger? Lost in thought, I didn't hear footsteps approaching until a voice spoke beside me. "Plotting your grand revenge?" The words were slurred slightly, but there was no mistaking Mark's voice. I turned to face him, surprised to find him alone. "Enjoying the evening air, actually." "Right." He swayed slightly. "The perfect ex-wife, graciously attending the rehearsal dinner. Everyone's talking about how wonderfully mature you're being. Is that a problem for you?" "It's not what I expected." He stepped closer, the scent of whiskey heavy on his breath. "You've always been predictable. Until now." "Perhaps you never really knew me," I suggested mildly. "I knew you," he insisted, reaching out to touch my cheek. 8 years of marriage. I knew every inch of you." I stepped back, putting space between us. "You should return to your guests, Mark. Your fiancée will be looking for you. Olivia." He laughed, a hollow sound. "Sweet, beautiful Olivia. The one who got away." His expression darkened suddenly. "Or so I thought." "What does that mean?" Mark ran a hand through his hair, the familiar gesture sending an unwelcome pang through my chest. "Nothing. Forget it." He turned to leave, then paused. "Sophie, do you ever wonder if we made a mistake?" The question hung in the air between us. Dangerous, tempting, a door I'd firmly closed months ago. "No," I said quietly. "I don't. But I think you're starting to." He stared at me for a long moment, something like desperation flickering in his eyes. Then a voice called his name from the terrace. "Olivia," searching for her missing groom. "Coming," he called back, not taking his eyes from mine. "Sophie, Good night, Mark," I said firmly. "I'll see you tomorrow." As he walked away, I pulled out my phone and composed a quick text to Richard. "Plans have changed. Meet me at 9 a.m. tomorrow." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. I arrived at the venue early, my gift carefully packaged in a white box tied with silver ribbon. The memory book I'd created was a work of art, hand-bound Italian leather embossed with their names, filled with photos and mementos of their relationship. And, carefully hidden between those pages, the truth that would change everything. As I placed the gift on the designated table, a familiar voice spoke behind me. "Is that what I think it is?" I turned to find Richard Mitchell, immaculately dressed despite his decision not to attend the ceremony. "It is," I confirmed, "though I've made some adjustments based on last night." Richard studied me carefully. "Are you sure about this, Sophie?" "Once it's done." "I'm sure." I straightened the ribbon on the package. "It's not about revenge, Richard. It's about truth. Something this marriage is sorely lacking." He nodded slowly. "Patricia and I will support whatever happens next." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched by their loyalty after everything. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of Olivia through an open door, surrounded by bridesmaids adjusting her veil. Her hand rested protectively on her supposedly pregnant belly, the performance so convincing that for a moment even I questioned what Patricia had told me. Then I remembered the financial documents, the loans, the calculated deception that had characterized this entire relationship from the beginning. The memory strengthened my resolve. This wasn't about punishing Mark or humiliating Olivia. This was about consequences. Natural, inevitable consequences for choices made with full awareness of potential harm. And as an event planner, I knew better than most. Every carefully orchestrated moment, especially a wedding, ultimately reveals the truth at its center. The ceremony was set to begin at 4 o'clock. I arrived at 3:30, slipping into a seat near the back of the vineyard's event space. White chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing an arch draped with greenery and white roses. A string quartet played softly as guests filtered in, the murmur of conversation rising and falling like waves. I smoothed the skirt of my emerald dress, a color I knew complemented my eyes, and surveyed the gathering. Despite the picture-perfect setting, tension hummed beneath the surface. The absence of the groom's parents had not gone unnoticed. Whispers and speculative glances bounced around the space like invisible tennis balls. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up to find James Chin, my +1 and the distinguished art dealer I'd been seeing for the past month. Tall, impeccably dressed and devastatingly handsome, he was exactly the kind of man Mark would feel threatened by. "Saved just for you," I replied, smiling as he sat beside me. James took in the scene with a practiced eye. "Beautiful setting," he observed, "though the energy feels strained." "The groom's parents decided not to attend," I explained quietly. "Last-minute decision." He raised an eyebrow. "Bold move bringing me to your ex-husband's wedding." "Bold is my new aesthetic," I said with a slight smile. "Besides, you're not just arm candy. You're moral support." "Happy to serve as both." James squeezed my hand as the music shifted, signaling the ceremony was about to begin. Mark appeared from a side entrance with his groomsmen, taking position beneath the floral arch. He looked handsome in his tailored suit, but his smile seemed fixed, his eyes scanning the crowd restlessly. When his gaze found mine, he froze momentarily. Then his focus shifted to James, confusion evident in the furrow of his brow. The bridal processional began. Bridesmaids in blush dresses walked slowly down the aisle, followed by the soft gasps that announced Olivia's arrival. She was undeniably stunning in a form-fitting lace gown, her baby bump artfully showcased by the cut of the dress. Her expression radiated triumph as she floated toward Mark. Through practiced composure, I watched as they exchanged vows, promises of honesty, fidelity, support. The irony was almost too perfect. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to this union, a ripple of tension passed through the guests, several heads turning subtly in my direction. I remained silent, my expression serene. This wasn't my moment to disrupt. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. "You may kiss the bride." As Mark and Olivia sealed their vows with a kiss, I felt something unexpected, not jealousy or anger but a profound sense of closure. Whatever happened next, my chapter with Mark was truly finished. The reception was held in the Vineyard's grand hall, transformed with cascading floral installations and ambient lighting that gave the space a warm, intimate feel despite its size. I moved through the cocktail hour with practiced ease, accepting condolences disguised as compliments. "You're so brave to be here. And you look amazing, divorce agrees with you," while introducing James to anyone who approached. From across the room, I observed Mark and Olivia making their circuit of guests, her hand often resting on her stomach in a gesture that now seemed painfully theatrical. Mark's eyes found mine repeatedly, his expression increasingly unsettled as the evening progressed. Dinner was served, toasts were made, and the traditional first dance commenced. As I watched Mark and Olivia sway to their chosen song, ironically the same one he and I had danced to at our wedding, James leaned close. "Are you all right?" he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "Perfect," I assured him, just waiting for the right moment. That moment came during the cake cutting. As servers began distributing champagne for the toast, I slipped away from the table and approached the gift display. The white box with silver ribbons sat prominently among the other presents, impossible to miss. I felt rather than saw Mark notice my movement. When I turned, he was watching me, champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. I raised my own glass slightly in his direction, offering a small smile before returning to my seat. The reception coordinator announced it was time for the newlyweds to open a special gift before the dancing began. "A tradition for good luck," she explained to the guests. My heart raced as Olivia exclaimed over the beautiful package, carefully untying the ribbon while Mark looked on, his expression increasingly wary. "Oh." Olivia lifted the leather-bound book from its box. "It's gorgeous." "What is it?" someone called from a nearby table. "A memory book," Olivia explained, turning it for guests to see. "With our names engraved on the cover." "How thoughtful." Mark reached for the card attached. His face paled as he read my handwritten note. "Every love story deserves to be remembered honestly." "Who's it from?" Olivia asked, trying to peek at the card. "Sophie," Mark said, his voice barely audible. Olivia's smile faltered momentarily before she recovered. "How lovely of her. Let's look inside before the dancing starts." Before Mark could stop her, she opened the book, gasping with delight at the first page. A beautifully composed collage of their early relationship photographs, sourced from their social media accounts. "This is amazing," she gushed, turning the page. "Look, Mark, here's when we reconnected at that coffee shop." Mark leaned in, visibly tense as Olivia continued turning pages. Each spread documented their relationship timeline with pristine attention to detail, but with subtle annotations that only those who knew the truth would recognize. Beneath a photo of their first public date, 3 months after they actually started seeing each other, alongside an image of Olivia's brand launch announcement, funded by $1.5 million from Mark's liquidated assets, with a picture of their engagement, 2 weeks after Sophie discovered the affair. Olivia continued oblivious, enthralled by the beautiful presentation, while Mark grew increasingly rigid beside her. Then she reached the center of the book. "What's this?" she asked, fingering an envelope tucked into the binding. Before Mark could intervene, she extracted it, finding a USB drive labeled "Wedding Gift" inside. "There must be more photos," she said, turning to the reception coordinator. "Can we play this on the projector?" Mark finally found his voice. "Not now, Olivia. We should. Don't be silly. I want to see what Sophie put together for us." She handed the drive to the coordinator, who moved toward the tech station. Mark's eyes found mine across the room, panic evident in his expression. I held his gaze steadily, offering neither malice nor mercy. Moments later, the reception hall screens illuminated with a video montage, not of Mark and Olivia, but of financial documents, text messages, and loan agreements. Each slide was presented elegantly as if part of a business presentation, with simple captions explaining the contents. Anderson Financial Group Loan Agreement, $800,000, defaulted March 2025. Mitchell Family Trust, withdrawal of $1.2 million against future inheritance. Text exchange between Mark and financial advisor regarding liquidation of retirement accounts. Olivia Reynolds LLC registration documents with Mark listed as 85% silent owner. The room fell silent as the presentation continued, culminating in a final slide displaying Mark and Olivia's complete financial picture. The mounting debt, the impending business launch built on borrowed money and false pretenses, the precarious foundation of their new marriage. No commentary. No accusations. Just facts beautifully presented. As the screens went dark, Olivia turned to Mark, her expression transitioning from confusion to dawning horror. "What is this? Mark, what are these documents?" I stood quietly and slipped out a side door, James following close behind. My work was done. The truth had been delivered, wrapped not in vengeance but in simple, undeniable reality. Outside in the warm evening air, James took my hand. "That was necessary," I finished for him. "Not cruel. Just truthful." Behind us, raised voices spilled from the reception hall. The carefully constructed facade was crumbling, just as I'd known it would. "Ready to go?" James asked. I looked back at the vineyard where I'd once dreamed of hosting my own anniversary celebrations with Mark. Strange how distant that fantasy now seemed. "Yes," I said with certainty. "I'm ready." 3 months passed like a dream sequence, bright, vivid, but with the surreal quality that comes when life suddenly moves in unexpected directions. My event planning business exploded after the Wellington wedding, with new clients clamoring for the woman who had transformed an industrial warehouse into a romantic Parisian street scene complete with starlit ceiling and cobblestone dance floor. "The phones won't stop ringing," my assistant Maya reported, dropping another stack of inquiry forms on my desk. "We're booked solid through next spring. I'm starting a wait list." I leafed through the inquiries, recognizing several prominent names. "We'll need to expand the team. Find 3 more coordinators with experience in luxury events." "Already interviewing," Maya confirmed with a grin. "Your profile in Vogue didn't hurt, by the way. The woman who orchestrates perfect moments is apparently catnip for Manhattan socialites planning their daughter's sweet 16th. I laughed, still not entirely comfortable with the recent publicity. The Vogue feature had focused exclusively on my professional achievements. The innovative concepts, the attention to personal details, the way I transformed clients' stories into immersive experiences. Not a word about my personal life or the dramatic conclusion to my marriage. I'd insisted on that boundary. "Any word from the Mitchell account?" Maya asked carefully. Patricia and Richard's vow renewal was still on our calendar for December, though I hadn't heard from them since the wedding day, as it had come to be known in my inner circle. Nothing yet, I admitted. I'm not sure if they'll proceed given the circumstances. The circumstances had become gossip fodder across New York's social scene. Mark and Olivia's marriage had imploded spectacularly within weeks of the wedding. She'd filed for annulment, claiming fraud and misrepresentation. He'd countersued, alleging she'd trapped him with a fake pregnancy. Both accusations were true, of course, but the public battle had been ugly nonetheless. Olivia's beauty brand never launched. The investors had pulled out after the wedding video somehow leaked online, though I had nothing to do with that particular development. Her Instagram following had plummeted as the fake pregnancy was exposed, her carefully curated image of authenticity shattered beyond repair. As for Mark, rumor had it he'd moved back in with his parents while trying to rebuild some semblance of financial stability. His marketing firm had lost several major clients in the wake of the scandal. The last I'd heard, he was considering relocating to Chicago for a fresh start. None of this brought me joy. Contrary to what many assumed, I'd never wanted Mark destroyed, only held accountable. The memory book had been carefully designed to reveal only factual information, nothing that couldn't be independently verified. If those facts happened to expose the foundation of lies, well, that was hardly my responsibility. My intercom buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. "Ms. Montgomery? There's a Mark Mitchell here to see you. No appointment." My heart stuttered. Did he say what it's regarding? Just that it's personal and urgent. I considered refusing, then thought better of it. Whatever Mark wanted, facing it directly was preferable to wondering. "Send him in, please." Moments later, my office door opened. Mark entered hesitantly, looking thinner than I remembered, shadows beneath his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. He wore a simple button-down and jeans, a far cry from the tailored suits he'd favored during our marriage. "Sophie." He nodded, remaining near the door. "Thank you for seeing me." "Of course." I gestured to the visitor's chair across from my desk. "Please sit." He did, perching on the edge as if prepared for a quick escape. "I've been trying to work up the courage to come here for weeks. What can I do for you, Mark?" He met my eyes directly for the first time. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. Not just the affair or the divorce, but for who I became during our marriage. For taking you for granted. For not seeing your value until it was too late." The words sounded rehearsed but sincere, like someone who had practiced what to say but meant every syllable. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "I also wanted you to know that my parents are still hoping you'll plan their vow renewal." He smiled faintly. "They talk about you all the time. Dad says you're the only Mitchell with any business sense." Despite myself, I smiled. "How are they doing?" "Better than me," he admitted ruefully. "They've been supportive despite everything. More than I deserve." Silence stretched between us, weighted with unspoken words and shared history. "Sophie, I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go," he finally said, voice breaking slightly. "I know I have no right to ask, but is there any chance?" My office door opened again and James appeared, looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, sweetheart. I didn't realize you had a meeting." He stepped forward, hand extended toward Mark. "James Chin. You must be Mark. Sophie's mentioned you." Mark rose automatically, shaking James's hand with visible confusion. "Nice to meet you." "James is early for our lunch," I explained, moving around my desk to stand beside my fiancé. The 3-carat emerald-cut diamond on my left hand caught the light, impossible to miss. Mark's gaze fixed on the ring, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Congratulations," he managed. "That's wonderful news." "Thank you," James replied, his arm settling comfortably around my waist. "We're very happy." Mark nodded, already retreating toward the door. "I should go. I just wanted to. Well, it doesn't matter now. Take care, Sophie." "Mark," I called as he reached for the doorknob. "Tell your parents I'd be honored to plan their vow renewal. The original agreement stands." Relief and gratitude flashed across his face. "Thank you. That will mean a lot to them." After he left, James turned to me with a raised eyebrow. "That was your ex-husband?" "Yes," I confirmed, gathering my purse. "He came to apologize." "And to ask for another chance," James observed shrewdly. Perhaps. It doesn't matter. I locked my desk drawer ready for our lunch date. That chapter is closed. James studied my face. Are you all right? Perfect, I said, meaning it. Let's go celebrate. I haven't properly congratulated you on the gallery expansion. Later that evening, as James and I enjoyed dinner at our favorite restaurant, my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. First ultrasound 10 a.m. tomorrow. I smiled, hand drifting unconsciously to my still flat stomach. At 8 weeks pregnant, I told only James and my doctor, wanting to be cautious, to protect this precious new beginning until we passed the first trimester. What are you thinking about? James asked, noticing my expression. The future, I replied simply. It looks brighter than I ever imagined. The waiter approached with our dessert, a chocolate soufflé we'd ordered to share. As he set it down, he presented a small envelope. This was left for you at the front desk, Ms. Montgomery. Inside was a sealed card addressed in familiar handwriting. Patricia Mitchell's elegant script. I opened it carefully. Dear Sophie, Richard and I couldn't be happier about your engagement. James is a fortunate man to have found someone with your strength and grace. We'd still love for you to plan our vow renewal in December with one addition to the guest list. You and James not as our planner but as our honored guests. Some bonds transcend legal definitions of family. With love and gratitude, Patricia. P.S. Mark is moving to Chicago next month. He finally told us everything, including how you protected him by keeping the financial documents private for so long before the wedding. Thank you for your mercy even when it wasn't deserved. I folded the note carefully and tucked it into my purse, emotion tightening my throat. Good news? James asked. Just confirmation that endings aren't always what they seem, I said. Sometimes they're just the setup for something better. As we shared the soufflé, I thought about the wedding gift I'd created. Not an act of revenge but a moment of truth that had ultimately freed everyone involved. Mark from a relationship built on deception. Olivia from a financial disaster she hadn't fully understood. And me from the lingering question of what might have been. The greatest gift I'd discovered wasn't in orchestrating the perfect revenge, but in creating space for authentic new beginnings, including my own. What shall we toast to? James asked, raising his water glass, having given up wine in solidarity with my pregnancy. I thought for a moment, then smiled. To perfect timing. Our glasses clinked gently in the candlelight, sealing a promise far more genuine than the one I'd watched unravel 3 months earlier. Not an ending after all, but the most beautiful beginning I could have imagined.